Operation Last Domino, Part 4, Point of No Return. My name is Daniel Vallis, and welcome to our channel. I do not know the day or hour, but I do know we are running out of days and hours. I do not know what's going to happen on the world stage, but we can see that certain things are moving in a certain very predictable direction. So in this video, we're going to speculate and we're going to examine some things that are happening in the news, how it seems to fit with a ladder of escalation moving in a certain direction. So we're just going to put all of our notes on the table today and talk about them. That's all we're going to do. We're just going to speculate and consider and examine what we see unfolding in the world. We've talked about 1 Thessalonians 5, for when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. There will be warnings, specific code words talking about peace and safety, because peace and safety is about to be taken from the world. There is a looming threat in the world that the smooth rolling along is about to be very disrupted. And it's going to deal primarily with peace and safety, because if you don't have safety, if you don't have security, then a lot of civilization rests on having stability. It can only thrive under situations of peace and safety. And so that's what the world is talking about right now, because they can see with all the disruptions in the Gulf area and the Strait of Hormuz and the energy disruptions, they know that peace and safety is very precarious right now, and it will not take too much more to really upset the balance of stability in the world. And once you upset the stability in the energy world, then everything else, that's a huge ripple effect across manufacturing and so many other aspects of society. So we find this being the topic right now: peace and safety, peace and stability, peace and security. And we've certainly seen over the past few days, just past 2 weeks, so much really bringing this to the world's attention. The news is really talking about how interdependent our modern systems are in our world right now. And the Bible tells us what this is leading to. It's leading to a sudden destruction that comes upon all them that dwell upon the face of the whole earth. Luke 21 talks about that. But it describes it's going to come as travail as woman with child. So it's going to be coming with some birthing pangs. There's going to be a ramping up period right before the actual sudden destruction comes. There's going to be a series of contractions. There will be effects felt in the world, so to speak, right before the sudden destruction truly comes. And so we've seen the peace and safety calls building over the years up until this point. So we haven't been surprised that these birthing pangs have now happened. But we are also starting to see, as we watch these dominoes, start to see that they're also increasing in tempo, how quickly they are now coming one after another, but then also the intensity that each strike, each further domino that falls right here at this late hour, really raises the specter that peace and safety can evaporate very, very quickly, which also means that sudden destruction is coming just as quickly too. So we're seeing an increase in tempo and intensity in these contractions, in these labor pangs, which also gives us a really good clue that the sudden destruction, the birthing picture, is not that far away. So we know we are running out of days and hours, and we have an expectation that the day of the Lord is going to be starting very, very soon. Therefore, we should not be sleeping. We should not just be kicked back, relaxed, and saying, well, it's going to happen. No, we need to be watching and we need to be sober. These are the two top instructions that the Apostle Paul gives us. When you hear them say this, you will have to be watching. You will have to be sober, because there's going to be a lot of lies out there. There's going to be a lot of deception. There's going to be a lot of emotional turmoil also with these labor pangs that are coming. These disruptions, these ripple effects that are felt throughout the world's economic systems and energy systems, and just the disruptions that are starting to happen, and for some people more than others, there's going to be emotional turmoil too. So you have to be sober. Set your emotions aside. Do not be emotionally connected to any politicians or world leaders right now, or even governments. Just cut those apron strings and say, I'm not going to be emotionally tied in. I have no emotional investment with what's going on right now. I need to be disconnected. I need to be sober. I need to factually look at what is unfolding in the world right now and not be emotionally attached to it somehow. If I find myself emotionally worked up by certain individuals or certain governments, whatnot, just step away from the plate. Just look at things from a factual, sober perspective. We need to be watching the world events, but also we need to be watching ourselves, making sure we are not caught up in the cares of this life, because this life is about to drastically change, and we see so many headline banners right now telling us the warnings in Scripture that they are about to change. So there's so many things we need to be watching in the news, but also watching about ourselves, because we should be watching and seeing that the day is approaching. Our life should be watching it and seeing that. Again, Revelation 17 tells us that those who are going to be handing their power over to the Antichrist are already on one page, they're already of one mind, they're already working together, and these are powerful people in the world. These are presidents and kings and those in authority in countries, prime ministers. They have the ability to hand over power and strength and to convince the governments to go along with them to hand over the power to the Antichrist. And so they're already on one page before the Antichrist gets here, which tells you they are already lying to their citizens even before the Antichrist shows up. This is where we are right now. These people who are intending to hand their power over to the Antichrist are in power right now, which means they are lying to you right now about what's going on right now. They know sudden destruction's coming. They know where it's going. They know the ladder of escalation, what it's going to result in. It's going to result in sudden destruction because they are forcing the hand of individuals to force a certain conclusion. They will be saying one thing that, oh, this will work out. The days of Noah will continue. You'll be able to keep buying and selling. Nothing's really going to disrupt the world's economy and how things are spinning along. They'll be lying to their own people because they know full well how it is going to end, the sudden destruction. So this is part of watching and being sober. You know what Scripture says, and that takes priority over what your TV says. In fact, just turn off your TV. If you want to be sober, turn off your TV. That is definitely designed to lie to you and to condition you in certain directions so you automatically assume certain things and you get emotionally invested in certain conclusions as well too. So just turn off your TV. It's a good step in being sober at this late hour. Approach everything you see with the news from a biblical perspective. Just write it down. They are lying to you. This is all scripted. Cause of peace and safety have been building particularly so much in the last year, 2025, and then even in this year with the Board of Peace, so much telling us that we are on the threshold of it. And then the very individual who started the Board of Peace is the one who's also started this war and this domino, so much falling into place and accelerating with these birth pangs. And again, part of watching and being sober is realizing this individual, Donald Trump, will lie straight to your face. And it shouldn't be a surprise because anybody who is thinking should realize he's lied so many other times. But even he himself has pointed out how the U.S. government has lied to get into wars in the past before, major wars right in this very region.
It just seemed like she was going to really look to impeach Bush and get him out of office, which personally I think would have been a wonderful thing.
Impeaching him?
Absolutely, for the war. For the war.
Because of the conduct of the war.
Well, he lied. He got us into the war with lies. And, I mean, look at the trouble Bill Clinton got into with something that was totally unimportant. And they tried to impeach him, which was nonsense. And yet Bush got us into this horrible war with lies, by lying, by saying they had weapons of mass destruction, by saying all sorts of things that turned out not to be true.
Donald Trump told a truth that so many Americans do know is that we were lied to. Major wars in the Middle East were started on lies. Donald Trump even knows that. And he's also addressing something that the average American voter should already know too. Your government will lie to you for reasons to kill people. And certainly as Christians, we should not support any individuals who lie to kill people. That's called murder. And if you support murderers who you know are liars to murder, then you are an accessory. We should watch and be sober and realize our government is lying. It knows that we know it's lying too, and yet they continue lying. The United States lied to get into the Iraq war. We've caused so much trouble in the world from them, killed so many families. Fathers, sons, brothers, women, children. And most of the Middle East knows America is a troublemaker who has come in to their neighborhood and caused so much trouble and chaos and then tries to leave the mess for others to clean up. And they know it was all done on lies. And so when they look at this current war going on, they also know that already conclusion is being done by liars. It's not being done for just reasons. And so they also know that they cannot negotiate in good faith anymore with these individuals, with these parties, because they will be backstabbed. There are ulterior motives. And so this also colors our perception of the war too, as we see their understanding and coupled with our own understanding of our own government too, how they historically acts, it historically lies to kill people. That should soberly tell us the direction that this is going. It is not for good causes whatsoever, and especially the more that we see certain dominoes being kicked over and hands being forced, we know this is forcefully being done to bring about the sudden destruction. They are forcing the hand for it.
Interest, I think, very much is in not going to war with Iran.
They said, he will start a war. I'm not going to start a war. I'm going to stop wars.
A war with Iran would make the war in Iraq look like a cakewalk.
Our president will start a war with Iran
because he has absolutely no ability to negotiate. He's weak and he's ineffective.
I've been a recovering neocon for 6 years now. Like the foolishness with which we ricocheted around the world, intervening, think it was in our best interest, when really we just overturned the table and created something worse.
You're not going to have a war with me, and you're not going to have a third world war with me. That I can tell you.
A vote for Donald Trump is a vote for a man who wants to end wars, not start them.
I was the first president in decades who started no new wars. We don't need the wars. Foreign lands, countries you've never heard of, countries that don't even want us there.
President Trump, as he says all the time, and as a lot of people recognize, is a president of peace. We want to have good relationships with everybody.
I am the candidate of peace. I am peace.
President Trump is the peace president.
We've spent $8 trillion in the Middle East, and we're not fixing our roads in this country? How stupid is it?
We've got to stop Donald Trump from starting a war with Iran.
We should have never been in Iraq. We have destabilized the Middle East.
Donald Trump will tell you exactly what you want to hear, but then when it's convenient, he will lie and do the direct opposite. His character has already been on display. Any Christian should know that Donald Trump is not to be trusted. He is a snake. He will lie to you. He will lie straight to your face. And it's not just him. It's many people in the United States government right now. There are the claims that we're going to war because Iran has killed so many people, that they're a terrorist state. They lie about Iran, and certainly they're no saint either, but they exaggerate it and lie that they're a terrorist and the whole nation's really bad, and so we need to go in and destroy this war. Yet anyone who is watching and sober knows the justifications for this war are non-existent. Totally non-existent. And that's why so many world leaders have also come out and said this was an unprovoked war. Iran has posed no threat whatsoever. This is totally unjustified. You are killing people. And that's why so many nations don't want to get on board or get involved in this either, because the justifications are lies.
In the last 5 decades, Iran has murdered nearly 1,000 Americans.
1,000 people over 5 decades? 5 decades, 50 years. Are you kidding me? What's that math work out to every year? 20 people every year? And they're saying we have to go bomb an entire country and disrupt the entire world's energy system through the Strait of Hormuz right there because of 20 people who die every single year? More people die every year by jaywalking and riding lawnmower accidents. They are lying straight to your face about the justification. That's no justification whatsoever. It's completely made up. Yet they keep repeating it. Oh, they're a terror nation. They're a terror nation. Well, give me some statistics. Well, 20 people a year die because of Iran. That is no justification to kill thousands of people. Again, they are lying to you. When you are sober, you can see it. And anyone paying attention to the news certainly should notice that the press conferences that Donald Trump gives about this war are bold-faced lies too. He tells you, oh, we didn't see this coming, we didn't know, nobody knew this was coming, yet I even recorded this even on our own timeline that this was going to happen because it was in the news weeks before the war even started.
Iran, who's truly a nation of great terror and power. Look what happened. In the last 2 weeks, they weren't supposed to go after all these other countries in the Middle East. Those missiles were set to go after them. So they hit Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Bahrain, Kuwait. Nobody expected that. We were shocked. And the other one, they fought back. They could have yielded.
He's lying to people even as the war continues. And friends, this is why you need to download the timeline and check it out every day. We don't have time to cover every single news event that happens. And certainly there's a lot that I assume you are also seeing and reading in the news yourself through your own due diligence. But we record how many times Iran told the United States, do not attack us, do not backstab us like you have done before, or we will attack your assets in this area. Iran has multiple times told the U.S. bully and Israel bully, the troublemakers, to back off, or we will give you a black eye. They've done this publicly multiple times. So the lies that Trump is telling people, he's lying to his own citizens. The ones who are gullible enough to still believe that he's telling them the truth. When he has lied repeatedly to their face multiple times, and they should know that, but it's just not registering. The Bible plainly tells us that they are the children of darkness. They will not be escaping what's coming. They are going to go into the day of the Lord. And so again, keep that forefront in your mind. When you see these people who are talking about peace and safety and the ones who are leading these events leading to the sun destruction and involved in this birthing pangs, they are liars. They are the children of darkness. They will lie straight to your face. That is part of being sober. Do not swallow anything they have to say. In fact, anything they say, you should be double checking. But you should also primarily be assuming they're lying to you, and they're also making public statements for a reason, because they want the gullible public to believe certain things about a plausible conclusion, so that when the sudden destruction does come, the gullible public already sees, well, this was a foregone conclusion, that's the way the things went out. The gullible public will believe it is certain reasons why the sun destruction came, not that it's part of prophecy, not according to what Scripture says. And even when the sun destruction comes, they will still be attached to certain individuals because they're not watching and they're not being sober. Again, the Bible emphasizes that Christ's coming, when he is visibly revealed, is going to be during the days of Noah and Lot, while people are still going on life as normal. They'll still be partying, eating, and drinking. There's still food on the shelves. Famine hasn't kicked in. They'll be buying and selling. The world economy is still going, which also gives you a clue that the world's reserve currency, the US dollar, is still going on pretty strong and hasn't collapsed yet. People are marrying, making long-term plans. Planting, fertilizer is still readily available. They're still planting for next year. Building plans, expansion plans, renovations. Everything's still spinning along like normal, although they will probably have some concerns. And with these birthing pangs, they are certainly giving people some slight pause that things could be really bad soon if they don't get better soon. It hasn't disrupted their activities yet, but it is giving them some pause, and they are starting to see and understand in their mind a plausible outcome that could be possible if things don't start getting diverted and intervention happens pretty soon. It will result in sun destruction. But as Christians, we need to realize there is a window within these birthing pangs, right when we know sun destruction is very close, but also a point where we realize we've passed a point of no return, where it's clear the birthing pangs have started. And that also tells us, again, the birthing is not that far away. And so as we examine all these events and what Scripture tells us, that gives us a very good clue that we are running out of days and hours. We are very, very short right now. And as we covered in our first video in this series, there's a certain segue and ladder of escalation that's going to climb in intensity. They are pushing over certain dominoes to lead toward the sudden destruction. Now, certainly there are a bazillion different rabbit trails and different ways and outcomes that could happen with everything that's going on, and that's why we need to watch the news every single day too, to get an idea of the tempo, how things are going, and the intensity. But based on my observations over the years, it does seem to be going in a certain direction, and so far it has been doing exactly that. We've covered how there's going to be certain escalations from the start, but how we needed to also expect that there is going to be an escalation point within this conflict where things are ramped up even more, where Israel and the U.S. attack Iran in a way that starts alerting the world that the U.S. and Israel are a loose cannon situation. A situation that would happen that alerts the world, hey, if these people aren't stopped soon, they can do some real damage. And that's the whole idea of a loose cannon. If you had an old ship, one of those old sail-driven ships, and you had a cannon on the deck and it wasn't lashed or tied down, in stormy weather it could roll all over the place, and you have this huge chunk of metal rolling all over the place. You never knew what it was going to run into. And so I told you, expect an event where the world starts seeing the U.S. and Israel as a loose cannon. They're going to do something drastic and dramatic that will have an impact, and that will really raise the stakes and start alarming people that this cannot go on for too much longer. And it's going to really bring the attention of the world to these three actors, Iran, Israel, and the U.S., because as the escalation ladder keeps climbing, events are going to happen. You're going to pass a point of no return where you can't undo. Up until a certain point, everybody could back off. Israel, the U.S. could say, okay, that's enough, we're going to stop. Up until a certain point, everybody could back off and save some face and no major ramifications for the world. But there's going to be certain escalations where there is an impact. Once it's done and made on the energy infrastructure, particularly in that region, you can't undo that damage. You can't put that cat back in the bag. And that's what we have just reached over the past few days, is certain damage has been done that is undoable at this point. And so the escalations going forward from this point are also going to be other escalations that are undoable as well. And they're going to cause further damage of a greater intensity too, which are also going to cause greater calls for intervention. And so that's why we've also seen in the news recently with one of these major interventions by Israel and the U.S., Iran made it very clear to the bully, essentially back off. If you attack us one more time, we will give you a black eye on your energy infrastructure. And we'll give you a big black eye. And we covered in our first video, there are a few options that Iran has to give the bully a black eye. It also can include other attacks on other energy infrastructure in the region too, such as the pipeline in Saudi Arabia and other ports and refineries there too. There's more that they can do on that region too, and I believe we might see one more rung on this ladder of escalation before it gets to some of the more dramatic events that Iran may threaten to give the bully a black eye with, but we are very close to that point where Iran will be fully backed into a corner and they realize they need to do something to make the bully stop. We are very, very close to that. But we have just passed a point of no return, and we're also starting to go into territory where major false flags might happen that blame a number of people, and just the blame itself will be very damaging and cause a huge ripple effect too. And we also talked about in our first video how there is apparently a disinformation campaign. They're starting to condition people that Trump might be assassinated. Trump himself brought that possibility up in 2025 when they started attacking Iran. But you're also seeing it being played out right now also by Trump himself too. We are already past a point of no return, so any escalation from this point is even going to be of greater intensity. The birth pangs, the contractions will be of greater intensity than what we have seen over the past few days just this week. And once Iran has to give the bully a black eye with something major, that's when the U.S. or Israel will probably lash out with nuclear weapons, probably a tactical nuclear weapon. And as we're going to look at today, this possibility is already being brought up, just like I told you it would be. We are very, very close to Iran threatening the bully with a major, major black eye, which means the next contraction we see is going to probably catch the world's attention in a major way. Again, download the timeline. Links are in the description box. There's a short view and a wide view. A lot has accelerated in the world over the past 20 days, and it has not let up. Each escalation has just increased in intensity. And so we can see the more that you study these and look at a big picture and look at it over multiple days too, and that's the advantage of a timeline. In the news, they don't give you that kind of view. They don't give you that perspective. But when you can see the escalation over time, you can really see the contractions and the labor pangs more clearly. We are in a high watch time right now because of the celestial clock with Jupiter right in the midst of Gemini. But then we also understand April 15th, in just about a month, that's when the sun will be at the first fish in Pisces, where it was at the start of the celestial signs. So this will be the 12th time it's coming in the 12th circuit it has completed, which is a strong reminder on the celestial clock about the 12th hour, which is midnight. Right here where Jupiter's at the midst of Gemini, where it was at the beginning of the celestial signs too. So there's a lot that tells us this window with the celestial clock pointing out both these pictures and ringing out essentially a midnight strong picture with the sun as a bridegroom right now. That tells us these labor pangs should not surprise us whatsoever. We are very, very short on time. And we should also consider we're close to the time of Passover, which reminds us when Christ gave us a lot of warnings to expect when he would be revealed. So much is pointing right here at this window right now. Let's zoom in and look at just a few news items that happened since our last video. Just to get an idea of the increasing intensity, but the point of no return that we passed. March 11th, the U.S. media started talking about Iran sleeper cells may be activated in America and may start some damage. Again, they're preconditioning and putting in people's minds that if certain things happen, blame Iran. Whether it's true or not, they just want people to believe a certain conclusion, which opens the door for a lot of false flag potential, obviously. But on the same day, Iran's security chief, he mentions to Trump in a public post, take care of yourself not to be eliminated. So a veiled threat of possibly being assassinated. And of course, this is after the U.S. and Israel has assassinated their leaders, so it's kind of par for the course. And so again, as you see this escalation, you're going to see different retaliations in kind. So in a sense, the average person is not going to be surprised what's happened, even though they may be shocked by the brutality of what's happened. They are preconditioned to expect certain outcomes as possibilities. But that should also remind us that it was a year ago that Trump himself started putting this in people's minds that he might be assassinated. And if that happens, blame Iran. Remember that?
Iran and their proxies who have threatened to retaliate against you and your team by killing you guys for taking out Soleimani.
Well, they haven't done that, and that would be a terrible thing for them to do, not because of me. If they did that, they would be obliterated. That would be the end. I've left instructions. If they do it, they get obliterated. There won't be anything left. And they shouldn't be able to do it. And Biden should have said that, but he never did. I don't know why, lack of intelligence, perhaps. But he never said it. If that happens to a leader, or close to a leader, frankly, if you had other people involved also, you would call for total obliteration of a state that did it. That would include Iran.
Now again, the children of darkness, when they see peace and safety, they are of one mind and they are one script. So if an assassination or some event like that happens, just assume that it is scripted. It is part of their story. They already knew it was going to happen and they already knew the outcome. The outcome is also scripted. So again, keep yourself emotionally distant from individuals and different governments, and it's all scripted. It is all scripted. These individuals are lying straight to your face, and they want you to believe a certain chain of events is going to just naturally lead to a certain conclusion, even though they are scripting the entire story. Now, this is interesting in light of Iran's leaders being assassinated and threats to Trump being assassinated. There's also growing rumors that Netanyahu is no longer alive, too. And there's been a lot of different videos come out lately where he's even trying to show people, yes, I'm still alive and everything. But there's so many inconsistencies and glitches and possibilities for AI in those videos that people are still not convinced that he's alive. And just based on the evidence that I've seen, I am 90% of the conclusion that he's probably not alive. Just because of the repeated AI videos that they keep putting out that are clearly AI. Like they put out one video of him visiting a cafe and picking up coffee that didn't spill, and multiple other glitches in that video too. But this is so scary. This is why you need to be sober. Do not go by appearances. And this is again why you shouldn't sit in front of the TV all day long. Jesus Christ himself warned we should not judge according to appearance, but judge righteous judgment. Do not go by appearances, especially at this late hour. Especially with AI technology, it is so easy to create fakes. It was amazing. Just hours after they put out their video about Netanyahu, other people were putting out AI videos, just mocking and making fun of it, and inserting other people. And it's so easy to do. You just have a real video with some person in there, and then you just have the computer overlay a certain individual, such as Netanyahu, or leaders of North Korea, or leaders of Iran. I mean, you could insert anybody, and it was comical how easy it is for almost the average person to quickly make fakes on the same level as this one video. That's the danger of technology right now. And that's why you should not judge by appearance. You need to be very sober about what you believe. Don't believe things just because you saw it on TV. And then Netanyahu put out a supposed press release just hours ago. There are inconsistencies in that. And they didn't even have live journalists there. It's supposed to be a press conference with the reporters, but all the reporters were done virtually, teleconferencing. They weren't even in the room. And so that also raised questions too. How can you have a press conference where you pretend you're talking to people, and then at the same time the press admits, yes, nobody was in the room, we all had to do a teleconference. So they didn't even see Netanyahu live. They saw what was on their screen. But it also caught a lot of Christians' attention how Netanyahu in this video, he made a dig at Christians and Jesus Christ. Then almost immediately he had to go on to social media after that statement about Jesus Christ, how more fake news about my attitude toward Christians who are protected and flourished in Israel. Let me be clear, I did not denigrate Jesus Christ at my news conference this evening. To the contrary, I cited the great American historian Will Durant, a fervent admirer of Jesus Christ. Durant stated that morality by itself is not enough to ensure survival. A morally superior civilization may still fall to a ruthless enemy if it does not have the power to defend itself. No offense was meant. That's what Netanyahu said right after he said, specifically Jesus Christ. Now again, watch and be sober. When you see certain statements being made that are very emotionally laden, particularly about even your own faith and your own religion, be sober. Be sober. Ask yourself, why are they saying this here at this late hour? They know it's a dig, and any Christian who's been paying attention knows the Jews do not have a good view of Jesus Christ whatsoever. And so this was a deliberate dig. And there's so many other analogies that he could have used to represent a morally superior civilization can still fall to a ruthless enemy. But he specifically named a person, not a civilization, not a certain even religion of a certain civilization. He mentioned a person because it's a dig at a person. The Jews, the religious Jews, do not like Jesus Christ. And again, this is one of the same individuals involved in peace and safety calls. Should we be surprised here at this late hour that one who is intending to hand power and authority over to the Antichrist and the government individuals who are on that same script and page, that they are making a dig at Jesus Christ himself right here at this late hour? We should not be surprised at all. Remember, in our last video, we covered how these events started on Ramadan 9/11, right when Trump, the main call peace and safety guy, was flying to Corpus Christi, again, kind of mocking the antithesis of the body of Christ. A Christian who is watching and sober at this late hour and knows what's truly going on from a biblical perspective should not be surprised that these digs are being made publicly. And if this is an AI video, they'd even raise more so that this was done deliberately. There's a lot of questions whether Netanyahu is alive or not, but apparently this dig toward Jesus Christ was made very, very deliberately. And again, this is the same individual that anybody who's watching and paying attention should know has lied repeatedly about Iran. Even back in 2012, he was saying, oh, they're weeks away, they're not that far away from a nuclear bomb. Even Donald Trump, remember during the presidential campaigns, he was saying, oh, they're weeks away from a nuclear bomb. They've been saying this for decades. It's a lie, and everybody who has paid attention to the news, particularly Trump and Netanyahu, knows that the justifications for this war are complete nonsense. They are outright lies. And so again, there's a lot of deception going on right now. Do not go by appearances, judge by righteous judgment, look at the facts, do some research, and hedge your expectations, have courteous skepticism toward everything that's portrayed in the news right now, particularly by individuals that you know are lying straight to your face. They know where this is leading, to sudden destruction. And so we should also not be surprised that there's growing threats about sudden destruction right now too. On March 11th, Trump said to the media, we could take Iran out this afternoon. We could take them out in an hour and they'd never be able to build their country back. Now, of course, that is a veiled threat at a nuclear attack. And he's doing that very publicly in front of the cameras and the news people. And so, again, from Iran's perspective, they would logically see leader of the one who's attacking them is making a veiled nuclear threat. So that raises the specter of how big their retaliation needs to be to make the bully back off. You have a belligerent on one side who makes a veiled threat of a very high magnitude, so that creates a retaliation of a high magnitude on the other side too. And this is being done publicly. Bullying threats are being made, so that helps explain why things keep ratcheting up and not de-escalating. It's because the bully who's in charge of this unprovoked attack on Iran keeps ratcheting up the threats himself. And so the average person's not surprised that, oh, the retaliations keep ratcheting up too, because our dumb leader doesn't know how to keep his mouth shut. That's the story that they're wanting the public to believe. Then a few days later, March 16th, Trump said, Israel will never use its nuclear weapons on Iran. This was interesting because David Sachs, the White House artificial intelligence and crypto czar, floated in an interview recently that you have to worry about Israel escalating the war by contemplating using a nuclear weapon. So this individual who's on the White House board and advisors right there, he publicly put out that, hey, you might have to worry about Israel using a nuclear weapon. That's not something you just throw out in the middle of a conflict that's going on. And so then Trump had to respond to that a couple of days later by saying, no, he didn't believe Israel would do that. And so it's interesting. You have the specter, again, raised of potential ratcheted up escalation with nuclear weapons, and that somebody might just possibly use a nuclear weapon. And then Donald Trump kind of acknowledged in a behind-the-scenes way that, yeah, they do have a nuclear weapon, but I don't think they would go that far. And so it's both kind of a veiled admittance that Israel does have nuclear weapons and that they might use it. They're starting to put these ideas into people's minds. And so that's what we need to be sober about. These liars are starting to, in front of cameras and the press, start talking about certain scenarios and possibilities that they want the public to think about. so that when it happens, the public is not surprised and they just automatically assume, well, things kept just ratcheting up and that's led us to where we are now. But it's all scripted. March 19th, Trump in the Oval Office, he just threatened to nuke Iran. And he also implied that there's other secret technology that they could use because he said the power of some of this weaponry is unthinkable. You don't even want to know about it. You could end this thing in 2 seconds if you wanted to. So in a way, he's kind of hinting at nuclear weapons again, or things on that same level of escalation that can do that type of sudden destruction. He's openly putting out in front of the cameras that yes, there's weapons of sudden destruction that can happen very suddenly. Very suddenly. And it's some of the secret technology that we have that can make things happen suddenly. Do you see how they're leading people by the nose to come to certain conclusions? The public to come to certain conclusions? Well, that's how the bluster and preconditioning lies are going. Let's look at a few energy events. March 12th, Iraq's oil ports completely halt operations after 2 tankers were hit in Iraqi waters. So you're starting to see more oil ports shut down. Partly because there's no more ships to load up, because they can't get in or out of the port. They're running out of storage. So some of the ports are being shut down, but also by attacks that are happening too. March 15th, the world's largest single-site aluminum smelter in the Middle East, Aluminum Bahrain Alba, cut its output by about 20% because it aims to preserve its inventory of raw materials. As supplies can't come into the Persian Gulf, obviously industrial concerns that are right there, manufacturing plants such as this aluminum smelter, they don't have a lot to work with, so they're starting to pare down their production just so they could keep the machinery running and keep the output going, but not at the same output that it had before because the input is less too. So again, these are some of the ripple effects on the larger manufacturing concerns that are in that region. Things are shutting down, not just the oil wells, not just the oil pumps and systems like that, but it's affecting manufacturing systems and factories that are reliant and tied to that same energy infrastructure too. March 17th. For the first time, Iran successfully targeted oil and gas production facilities rather than refining terminals and storage. So you're starting again to see this ladder of escalation where each attack requires an escalation of retaliation. And then, of course, the next one will have to be bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. It goes back and forth. It keeps climbing the ladder of escalation. Before they had been attacking just the loading parts of the docks and where they load and pump, but of actually attacking the oil and gas production facilities, the complex machinery parts that cannot be easily repaired. And so again, this is part of where you're reaching the threshold, the point of no return, where things are being attacked that you can't just put the pieces back together. Humpty Dumpty is fallen down and broken, and you can't put these pieces back together anytime soon. You're talking about machinery and refineries that are very, very complex. Some of these refineries take a decade to have built up to where they are now. Some of these parts take a year to machine. And that's what makes this a point of no return. You can't de-escalate from this point anymore. Damage has been done, and retaliation is going to only get higher and then more intense from this point on because the stakes have been raised so much higher because the damage is essentially permanent and they can't even start repairs until the war is over anyway. March 19th, missile strikes key Israeli refinery, which supplies about 50 to 60% of Israel's national fuel. So you're seeing the stakes being raised more and more and hits being done that take longer and longer to repair, which means the effects are going to be felt longer and longer, and the ripple effects on industries and production, multiple areas in electricity and power generation, the impact is getting larger and larger. The contractions are being felt more and more. Beijing bans exports of nitrogen-potassium fertilizer blends and certain phosphate varieties to secure domestic supplies. Again, because of the fertilizer production, how it's tied to the oil and gas production here in the Middle East, that has a ripple effect. In other countries, it does affect them, so they're starting to tackle down and secure their own supplies too, because things, the permanent damage to these systems that make so many things, not just oil and gas, but you're talking about fertilizer and helium, the impact on the factories that produce this stuff, countries are realizing we need to start securing our domestic supplies because this is affecting us. While at the same time, the EU continues to shoot themselves in the foot. So there's multiple problem causers on multiple fronts here, not just in the Middle East, but situations are being exacerbated. The strain on the energy supply system and the whole supply chain of the world is being strained right now because of deliberate interference by these leaders who are putting out these calls of peace and safety. Not one molecule. EU rules out relaxing Russian gas ban to ease energy crisis. We've decided in the European Union that we do not want to re-import Russian energy, the EU Commissioner for Energy said. It's extremely important that we stick to this line. We cannot in Europe help indirectly finance Russia's brutal illegal war, he said. Okay, so right at a time when oil and gas supplies are getting very constrained, they're making very public stance that no, we're not going to do things that can ease these problems that we've created for ourselves because of the direct influence in Ukraine in the first place over a decade ago. We're actually going to make the situation worse. There's things that we could do to make the situation better, but we're actually going to make it worse. China curbs fertilizer exports amid global supply shock. Chinese authorities have instructed exporters to halt outbound shipments of certain fertilizer products in order to safeguard domestic supplies and stabilize prices ahead of the country's crucial spring planting season. Okay, so this is very important, particularly in the Northern Hemisphere, as so many people are approaching the crucial spring planting season. And suddenly major suppliers of fertilizer and distributors of fertilizer are now all of a sudden saying, well, we're not shipping out anything, we're going to keep it to ourselves because we got to prioritize our grain production first. Because if we don't protect our production first, then that leads to national concerns, national security concerns. As we talked about before, the governments of the world are most concerned with stability. So they will intervene before anything disrupts stability. And these impacts, particularly these permanent impacts that are happening in the Middle East, will speed up that intervention in different nations. The United Nations, Middle East war risks pushing 45 million more people into acute hunger. And so they're highlighting this whole ripple effect across fertilizer and getting it out to different countries. It is making a huge impact potentially this year for so many people in the world. The UN World Food Program, which feeds so many people and refugees and different things like that, they're pointing out how their shipping costs are up 18% so far. And we have thousands of trucks on the road every day, he said. So their costs are going up. So it's making harder to do relief efforts across the world, which also means they've been forced to cut food rations for people in famine conditions in Sudan, he said. And then talking about how the disruption of global fertilizer markets, if the Middle East conflict continues through June, an additional 45 million people could be pushed into acute hunger by price rises, he warned. Okay, so a lot of people look at the Middle East and just think oil tankers and oil. But this is having a huge impact on spring planting, which is coming up very soon for so many people because fertilizer is getting pricier, hard to get. Suppliers are just suddenly stopping supplies of fertilizer. So those who are most vulnerable are going to feel the impact quickest. And so that's what the United Nations is warning about. If this is not resolved pretty soon, this event here in the Middle East, you're talking about 45 million people potentially who are going to be feeling the effects of this famine-induced shortages pretty soon. And just from a Christian perspective, as we consider what's laid out in the book of Revelation with the opening of the seals, one of the seals being famine and death that comes on the world, we can start to see how these birth pangs right now, right here in early spring, can really set the stage for famine for millions of people very soon, and that's even without the larger war destructions coming of World War III. You can see the groundwork even being done right now that's going to impact millions of people in months ahead, just a few months ahead. So this is why we're at a point of no return. You see the ladder of escalation rising in the Middle East, and the damage that's being done gets more and more permanent. And then the ripple effects are also going to be more and more permanent. And as we see how this event is leading towards sudden destruction, World War III, it's going to compound all these other things that are already set in motion too. The potential famine for millions of people. Scandinavian airline cancel 1,000 flights in April after jet fuel price doubles in 10 days. Given the ongoing situation in the Middle East, including the sharp and sudden increase of global fuel prices, we are taking measures to strengthen our resilience, the statement said. And so they're starting to cut back on some domestic flights and this isn't a major cutback, but it is showing you how different industries, the ripple effect of just prices doubling affects so many people. And they're starting to have even whole industries such as airlines starting to cut back flights because prices are just starting to go through the roof. And you can't do the world supply chain and how the system moves is having to slow down forcefully because of these shortages. But they're also aware that's just the price increases from what is happening. If this gets worse, if the retaliation steps escalate even further, we could potentially see jet fuel prices more than double. So the industries know this, the governments know this, they're all watching that things are getting really spicy here pretty soon. Exxon BP Vital ships most U.S. fuels to Australia for a single month in 3 decades, Trader says. So as, again, China and those regions start cutting back on their exports of the finished oil products, that's hurting those who rely on them. Australia usually relies on Asia for the vast majority of its oil product imports, but China and Thailand have banned fuel exports to preserve domestic supplies, and refiners across the region are cutting output as Iran's blockade of the Strait of Hormuz sharply cuts crude exports from the Middle East. So some of those crude exports would go to Singapore and other refiners in the area, and then those finished products would go to Australia. And all this underlines Australia's vulnerability to the Middle East oil shock. The island holds stockpiles far below global standards, and last year imported 84% of its petroleum product needs, government statistics show. So there's some nations that are a lot more vulnerable to the supply chain risks and shocks that are going on right now. And this is just what has happened so far, with just attacks on the actual refinery equipment just recently starting. You see any more attacks on the refinery systems, and you're going to see things tighten up a lot more, lock down a lot more. But it also highlights how certain nations already know they have a very small stockpile, a very small buffer already too. So if this escalates even further, particularly to more permanent damage, they're going to be in a world of hurt because it's already getting harder to find people who are still exporting suppliers. That's why Australia's having to get this oil from the U.S. It's going to have to be shipped all the way from the U.S. Now, on March 13th was when we started to see a major escalation in this direction where we came very close to a point of no return on March 13th. That's when Trump announced that U.S. Central Command had carried out a major bombing raid on Karg Island, which handles upward of 90% of Iran's crude oil exports. That's where they ship out a lot of their oil to China and so many other places. It's all loaded up right there at that island, Karg Island. And so they attacked that island, but they did not touch the oil infrastructure. They just attacked military installations that were on that island defending the island. Trump posted, "The United States Central Command executed one of the most powerful bombing raids in the history of the Middle East and totally obliterated every military target in Iran's crown jewel, Karg Island." Now, Iran had previously warned that an attack on the island would cross a red line and precipitate Iranian attacks on energy infrastructure up and down the Persian Gulf. They had already given a warning out way previously. If you attack this island, which is so vital to our shipping out and our loading terminals for the oil tankers, if you attack that island, we will attack the energy infrastructure up and down the entire Persian Gulf here. So that was a red line. And Trump came very, very close to attacking the oil infrastructure, but they just attacked the military. But they warned we could attack the infrastructure. And so this is where the bully came right up to the line, came right up to their nose, and was starting to poke them, so to speak, of daring them to retaliate. Very next day, Iran. If Iran's oil, economic, or energy infrastructure is attacked, we will immediately destroy energy and economic infrastructure across the region belonging to companies with American shareholders or ties to the U.S. So the bully came right up in their face and dared them to poke back. And so they put out their red line. If you attack us one more time, if you don't back off, we will attack you and your friends in this area. We will give you a black eye. They confronted the bully and told him exactly what they would do. March 18th, the energy infrastructure. Israeli airstrikes hit Iran's giant South Pars natural gas field and associated infrastructure. This is Iran's largest natural gas processing facility. Most of Iran's gas production comes from South Pars. Iranian state TV said that South Pars phases 3, 4, 5, and 6 were hit by Israeli airstrikes, which is the core upstream gas infrastructure at the backbone of Iran's energy system, marking a major escalation in the Gulf energy risk. The gas field is the key source of pipeline gas to Turkey via a certain line that goes through Iran, raising Turkey's LNG risk. Iran halts gas flows to Iraq, diverted for domestic use. Now, gas flows from Iran account for 40% of Iraq's supply. Okay, this is a point of no return right here. That is very, very important because this one event, this one attack on Iran's energy infrastructure marked a point of no return. This is damage that affects the national energy security of Iran, Turkey, and Iraq. You're talking about infrastructure that feeds the power system of Iraq. You're talking about the infrastructure that feeds Turkey's gas lines. But it's also a core source of Iran's own power too. And so they have to halt the gas flows, what they export to Iraq and Turkey, because they need the gas themselves for their own power generation and for their own gas needs for their own industries. And so again, you're seeing the ladder of escalation keep climbing and climbing with damage to very complex machines and systems that cannot be quickly repaired at all. So until the war ends where they can be repaired and the risk is gone, this impact on not just Iran, but Turkey and Iraq is also going to be felt too. Again, Iran accounts for 40% of Iraq's supplies of gas, which they need for their power-generating power plants too. So who's going to start having some power blackouts pretty soon? It's probably going to be Iraq. It's going to affect their oil production, their factory production. You're going to see impacts on other areas of the Middle East oil and energy production because of what's happening here. And of course, the impacts in Turkey too. But this attack was at the heart of Iran's energy system, their national energy system. So this was a huge escalation, which also means any retaliation is going to be right on par for course too, which is exactly what happened. They immediately retaliated on American shareholders or ties to the U.S. They attacked Qatar's Ras Laffan, which damaged the main LNG export hub. It manufactures LNG, and it was attacked and destroyed part of it. The Qatari Prime Minister confirms damage to 17% of Qatar's LNG export capacity for 3 to 5 years. The damage is so extensive, even to the small percentage here. This is complex equipment here that was damaged. It's going to take 3 to 5 years for them to repair this damage. It takes a long time to repair, and they have to wait till the war is done too. And of course, they're fully aware that at any moment, Iran can take out the other percentage of their production too. All the other parts of their equipment at that same plant too. Qatar's main LNG export hub. Completely take it out of the picture. Iran attack wipes out 70% of Qatar's LNG capacity for up to 5 years, Qatar Energy CEO says. Because of this, state-owned Qatar Energy may have to declare force majeure on long-term contracts for up to 5 years for LNG supplies bound for Italy, Belgium, South Korea, and China due to the 2 damaged trains. Okay, that's incredible. Just look at all the people that they export to from this one plant here in Qatar. And they've been knocked out 17% of their capacity, and they're already having to cancel out contracts for up to 5 years. They know they're going to be out that for a long time. The fallout extends well beyond LNG. Qatar's exports of condensate will drop by about 24%, while liquefied petroleum gas, LPG, will fall 13%. Helium output will fall 14%, and naphtha and sulfur will both drop by 6%. The damaged units cost approximately $26 billion to build. This is also having a ripple effect on the planning for the energy infrastructure and the oil companies too, of realizing, is it worth reinvesting and repairing some of this equipment in some of this area, this whole area that's so hostile? And so they're reconsidering certain things and considering whether we should have all of our eggs in one basket and whatnot. A lot is being brought to consideration of the ripple effects, but also the potential future impacts too. And also aware that in the very short term, more attacks can happen which could completely knock out all their output. So that sends a lot of volatility into the industry too. And of course, the ladder of escalation keeps rising. Trump threatens to massively blow up the entire South Pars gas field if Tehran dares hit Qatar's LNG infrastructure again. If you attack Qatar's gas infrastructure again, we'll completely destroy your gas infrastructure, Iran. Trump denies approving Israeli power strikes, insisting the U.S., quote, knew nothing about the Israeli power strike. Iran warns of more retaliation strikes on energy sites. Quote, the only reason for restraint was respect for requested de-escalation. Zero restraint if our infrastructures are struck again. End quote. So this is important. They only knocked out 17% of Qatar's LNG export capacity, knowing full well they could have done so much more. And now they're laying out another red line. If you attack our energy infrastructure again, we will take it out to zero. There will be nothing coming out of Qatar. Nothing. And so again, we see this ladder of escalation rising and rising. Each blow requires a higher blow in return. And as we just listed off the different countries affected by the exports here and the impacts on the countries fed by Iran to their gas field, the ripple effect, the cascade effect is immense just with what is already happening. So the next attack, which will be even greater escalation, the ripple effect is going to be felt on those same countries, again, that are already having to stop their exports to them. But then it's going to impact even more. And then you get to a point where the contracts, you just don't even bother making them anymore because it's like indefinitely on hold. But we're also now getting to the specter where attacks on these energy infrastructures and this complex equipment, it's creating national security concerns for these other nations that are affected because they know, hey, this is having a huge impact on our power. Iraq, for example, runs roughly 45% of its electricity generation on Iranian gas. Any more escalation is going to cause even greater potential for blackouts in Iraq and affects their whole production and their oil productions and their oil field productions. They're going to have to slow down. So there's a huge cascade effect that has now been set into motion already. We've already passed a point of no return. This equipment cannot be replaced overnight. It's going to take months and months and years to repair some of this equipment. Any further escalations are going to make a lot of export from the Gulf region almost indefinitely put on hold. And we're really getting to the point where the damage is getting very close to almost irreversible. But you can also see that the parties are not backing down because Iran has come to the point where they realize the bully is not going to back down until they feel some major hurt. And Iran has publicly said that. We're not going to back off until you learn a lesson where you never think of attacking Iran again. And we're going to make sure you get to that point too. We're not backing down. You're the one that has to back down. Right now, Iran is dominating the court, so to speak. They are holding all the cards because they can inflict more damage permanently on the energy infrastructure in the region, very complex equipment. And so, in a sense, the ball is back in Trump's court. What are you going to do, bully? Are you going to back off? If you won't back off, we will make sure you feel it. And we will make sure you feel it until you back off. Iran actually holds all the cards right now, because they can hold the energy infrastructure in the region hostage, so to speak, the friends of the bully who attacked them. And also because of the American interest in that same infrastructure, it is one and the same too. The contractions are getting harder and harder, and they're also going to get more intense from this point on out, and you're also going to see them happen quicker and quicker. When you look at the gas fields and the oil fields that are in this region and the pipelines, you can see why so much is bottled up in the Persian Gulf, why it's so important, why there's so much infrastructure and refineries and LNG and gas facilities right here in this region, because that's where the resources are. So whoever controls the Strait of Hormuz also has within range all the infrastructure and the factories that produce all this stuff too. They can also hit the pipelines that lead out of this area as well too. So you may potentially see escalation in days ahead hit the east-west pipeline that goes through Saudi Arabia. That would really bottle up the majority of any exports right there in the Gulf too. And if that gets hit, or if you see more attacks on Yanbu there in the Red Sea, where they can bypass and load up oil tankers there and stuff, that will cut that off too. So you're going to start seeing escalation, so don't be surprised if you see major points, weak points on this chain suddenly being knocked out in days and hours ahead too, because that's how the ladder of escalation goes. Again, this is highly complex equipment that cannot be repaired easily. Some of this takes months and years to manufacture some of these parts, particularly for the gas production. Each escalation bakes it into the cake that sudden destruction is inevitable because of the cascading effects on nations, their national security, that are impacted by the attacks on these structures, by these sites. Now, you may be an American and you may think, well, the Middle East doesn't affect us. We have all of our own oil production, so yeah, things may get rough over there, but it's not going to affect us here in America. That's where you're wrong. Donald Trump likes to say, well, the price of oil goes up, so we're going to make a lot of money. That's not how it works at all. Oil producers also want a world with peace and safety, peace and stability, because they have to export their oil and sell it somewhere. They want to be able to develop contracts that are long-term and predictable, give them a long-term return and predictable return on their investments too. They have products that they want to sell beyond just America. They got clients all over the world. They got investments. They got oil facilities all over the world, drilling and different energy explorations going on all over the world. That's why it's in their interest for peace and safety as well too, because that affects their bottom line. It affects their industry. It affects how they decide where to invest, where to explore. And when they start seeing more situations where their entire factories and their whole facilities start being blown up and going up in smoke, that really makes them reassess their investments of new exploration and new drilling. But then they also have to start passing on those costs of those billion-dollar facilities that just got blown up. Guess who's going to be paying for it? Yeah, it's their customers. The gas prices are going to be rising at home too, because you're paying for their investments that got blown up across the ocean. And they know that when their investments are blown up, then their return and their profit margin decreases. So they have to make it up somewhere. Where is that going to happen? It's with their markets that aren't necessarily affected. They're going to pass the cost over to them. But then also the gas and the oil production is going to be the least of Americans' concerns, because that just makes a small percentage of GDP. You're going to worry more about where do we get most of the goods in America from. It's from the factory of the world, China. We don't produce much here in America. It's going to come from other places, and their energy prices and their production prices and their input production prices are going up. Guess who they're going to be passing the prices on to? It's the customers who buy all their stuff. What's going on in the Middle East is about to have a world of hurt for America, but then the greater danger is not necessarily oil or gas availability in America. It's how valuable is your dollar going to be? Because what's going on in the Middle East, the purchasing of the oil, it's done in the dollar. That's why it's called the petrodollar. That's why we have our Navy bases there, because we provide security for that area. It's basically mafia protection. We protect and make sure the oil flow goes and the oil tankers to safely get to their destinations and leave the area. And that's why the transactions are done in the dollars, because we provide the security, and so that dominates and gives demand to the US dollar. Well, if those energy facilities there in the Middle East are destroyed and their output is zero, are greatly diminished, and nothing's being shipped out, or very little is being shipped out, and the oil wells are shut in and the oil can't leave and go to other people, why should they spend dollars to buy something that's not being shipped out or can't even be produced? Because the facilities are being destroyed. So you're going to see a massive loss of demand for the US dollar, because they'll just buy their oil and their gas products from other people, and so the demand for dollars is going to crash. The demand for U.S. treasuries is going to crash too, because the countries don't need those dollars, they need other currencies. And so that's what Americans really need to worry about this whole situation, is your dollar is going to drop in value a whole lot sooner than you're going to run out of gas or oil. And so I've been telling people for years that the American way of life, the American government, it's all slated to be a phoenix. This is a controlled demolition. And so that's why it's important the U.S. dollar is at the heart of this scenario in the Middle East. It's because it's not only destroy the oil infrastructure and the oil and the energy supply chains that are vital for so many parts of the world, it's going to destroy the U.S. dollar, which again is going to have a huge economic ripple effect and cascade effect throughout the world too at the same time as all this. So when they pull down the system, when they destroy the system leading up to the Antichrist, the sudden destruction, they wanted to destroy not just energy and oil and gas, they wanted to destroy some of the major economic pillars of the world right now, main parts of the economic lifeblood that is flowing throughout the world, that enabling so many transactions. The sudden destruction is going to be very thorough. And that's why it's woven in through all these parts and these players, because it is intended to bring down the world's structures so they can hand their power and authority over to the beast. What is going on in this scenario in the world right now? It is pushing over the last dominoes. We have reached the point of no return, and we can see by the ladder of escalation that they are about to push over some final points of the last dominoes that bring us right to the threshold of sudden destruction. And it'll be on everybody's minds, and yet the days of Noah and Lot will still be going on. They'll still be buying and selling, but they can see right on the threshold, all of it is about to go into the trash can. Everything in the world is about to change. Planting, building, partying, everything is going to hit the fan all at once. And you can see all the scenarios affecting all these areas resting on so few pillars right now that they are knocking out of the way. As the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be, when the Son of Man is revealed. And all this sudden destruction is going to be put on the troublemakers, the bullies. That's the way they're scripting this scenario right now, to put all the blame on certain people. The U.S. and Israel, particularly Trump, the main person who's been saying peace and safety. And so you may have seen in the news March 17th, that's when Joe Kent, director of the National Counterterrorism Center, he resigned. He said, "I cannot in good conscience support the ongoing war in Iran. Iran posed no imminent threat to our nation, and it is clear that we started this war due to pressure from Israel and its powerful American lobby." So then Mike Johnson came out in response to that and said, well, there's other threats that he wasn't aware of, and that's why we went to a war. And then other individuals said, I'm on the intel committees, and there was no imminent threat to the United States. This war was a terrible idea. You're starting to see put out in the public front more and more public discussion that this war is not just. This war is a terrible idea. There was no threat. Now, the other nations, the European nations and whatnot, Russia and China, they've said this from the get-go, that this is not a just war. There was no threat. But now you start to see it more in the American public talked about more and more. Why? Because they want this brought out. The lies are going to be exposed on purpose to throw Trump and Israel under the bus. Because the worse that this war starts to get and the impacts and the cascading effects of this war start to happen, they need someone to blame for the sudden destruction that's coming. Because we've passed a point of no return. And it's not apparent to most Americans, a lot of people, just because the world's still humming along, they aren't aware of the ripple effects that are still rushing toward them, the tidal wave that is still rushing toward them, especially if more escalations happen. But they're laying the groundwork because they know pretty soon it will be apparent, and they need to have someone to blame. Who are they going to blame? Trump and Israel. And so you start putting these talking points on the public media, and you have this one individual. Again, don't take sides. Do not take sides. Be sober. Just watch, observe how the scenario and the script is being put out in the public. What is the public perception that they want people to have? What are they talking about? What do they want people to talk about? That will give you an idea of the direction of how the script is going. As head of the National Counterterrorism Center, Kent was in charge of an agency tasked with analyzing and detecting terrorist threats. So public discussion is being brought out that this war is not just, and individuals such as Israel brought us and got us into this situation. They're the real troublemakers. That's what the public perception is, and you're going to see it grow more and more, while at the same time, Trump is also portraying himself. He's doing it himself. He's running the script where he is incompetent, and he is also going to be blamed as the cause for getting us into this war with no planning. That is how the script is going. Donald Trump is playing the puppet role of a bumbling fool. March 7th, Donald Trump talked about how the United Kingdom, our once great ally, maybe the greatest of them all, is finally giving serious thought to sending 2 aircraft carriers to the Middle East. That's okay, Prime Minister Starmer, we don't need them anymore. But we will remember, we don't need people that join wars after we've already won. Very arrogant. Telling, okay, the UK, we don't need your aircraft carriers, we don't need your help. That was on the 7th. March 14th, 1 week later, many countries, especially those who are affected by Iran's attempted closure of the Hormuz Strait, will be sending warships in conjunction with the United States. Hopefully, China, France, Japan, South Korea, the UK, and others that are affected by this artificial constraint will send ships to the area. Okay, maybe we need some help after all. We're doing so great. We won, but we need some help here. Can you guys help? He's portraying himself as a bumbling fool, but also very arrogant, and dismissing close allies and doing diplomatic damage to allies as well. This is all being done publicly. Now, of course, notice this is on social media, and so this is meant for consumption by the average gullible person. Any diplomatic communications, that's not done on social media, that's done behind the scenes through diplomatic channels. And so this isn't real conversation at a diplomatic level. This is meant for public consumption. They want the public to perceive that Trump is a bumbling fool who can't even start a war, who can't even do proper planning, who alienates himself from all his friends, who's so brash and arrogant and just, he's a loose cannon. You never know what he's going to say. Last week, he didn't need us. Now he needs us. What's he going to say next week? This is for public consumption. And so this is the perception that they want the public to have, that he is not really in control. It's spinning way out of control. It's worse than they're letting on. He really does need help, but he keeps trying to tell people, oh, we're winning, everybody, we're winning, but we really need some help. If you guys could help out, that would be great. March 14th again, the countries of the world that receive oil through the Hormuz Strait must take care of that passage, and we will help a lot. This should have always been a team effort. And now it will be. It will bring the world together toward harmony, security, and everlasting peace. Now, of course, anybody with a sane head looks at the Middle East situation right now with the war and the impact on the energy infrastructure and knows this guy is delusional. Or at least his statements come across as one who is delusional, and that's why they're worded the way they are. He's calling for peace and security. Again, what Scripture warns us, this means sudden destruction is coming. When you look at this event where they keep peppering out peace and security and talking about peace and security and peace and stability, it's not going to get better, it's going to get worse. These are birthing pangs. These are not just some rough little bumps in the road. These are birthing pangs for sun destruction. This guy who is saying it, who's saying the peace and security, he's the one causing it. And so as you see what he's saying in the scripts that they're putting out for the public, they want the public to believe that this is bungled from the start. There was no planning. It's just spinning out of control and just naturally led to this sun destruction. And it's all Trump's fault and Israel's fault because they started this with no planning. Everybody knew this would be a disaster. That's the public perception they want the world to have. But notice how he emphasizes security and everlasting peace. And obviously that is a ridiculous joke. He's emphasizing that on purpose because those who understand true everlasting peace know it's not coming through him. And it's not coming through their efforts. The children of darkness for sure. March 17th. Because of the fact that we had such military success, we no longer need or desire the NATO countries' assistance. We never did. Likewise, Japan, Australia, and South Korea. In fact, speaking as President of the United States of America, by far the most powerful country in the world, we do not need the help of anyone. And so there's a huge vacillation going on, showing or portraying the mental state of the President of the United States, that he's very arrogant, brash, just thinks of his own priorities, and puts little thought into actions that are affecting the rest of the world. And because of this arrogance that he portrays in his own words, that also sets the understanding that, wow, this guy, he's going to start acting more and more isolated by himself. The actions that they do are just going to start to be just on their shoulders, U.S. and Israel. Because he's going to start having to demonstrate that he is in control, that he doesn't need anybody's help, that he can do it just by himself with his toys. He doesn't need anybody's help, so he's going to try to show that to the world too. So take note of that in the statements, what is implied by these statements that they want the public to believe. March 20th. Without the USA, NATO is a paper tiger. They didn't want to join the fight to stop a nuclear-powered Iran. Now that fight is militarily won, with very little danger for them. They complain about the high oil prices they are forced to pay, but don't want to help open the Strait of Hormuz. A simple military maneuver that is the single reason for the high oil prices. So easy for them to do, with so little risk. Cowards. And we will remember President Donald Trump. Again, the arrogance is off the charts with this, but that is deliberately scripted. Because they want you to know something is about to happen. They are about to show or try to show that the U.S. doesn't need anybody else. Doesn't need their allies. Because they got some major weapons, they can handle it themselves without anybody's help. So they are probably going to take some steps without anybody's help, without anybody else's advice, without anybody's input. They are going to act on their own. By someone who thinks that this is just a simple military maneuver, he is going to do something militarily that is so stupid. He thinks it's so easy to do with so little risk. They're cluing you in that he's about to do something that they'll tell people, oh, he didn't know it was going to blow up like that. Well, everybody in the world could have told you that. That's the whole point of why they're putting this out publicly. This isn't a diplomatic communication. This is meant for scripted, gullible people. Letting you know that Trump is about to do something stupid, majorly stupid. And he also portrays this publicly on TV too.
Thank you. You were talking about Iran a couple times today and what they did after Epic Fury began. You said they hit Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Bahrain, Kuwait. Nobody expected that. We were shocked. Are you surprised that nobody briefed you ahead of time that that might be their retaliation?
Nobody, no. The greatest experts, nobody thought they were going to hit. They were, I wouldn't say friendly countries. They were like neutral. They lived with them for years.
Giving the impression that he does not think in long-term plans. He can't even think beyond just today. He doesn't think of the ramification of his actions. He does not listen to any input. He's acting by himself, all alone, on his own ego. And he's about to do something really stupid. While at the same time telling you he does not care what other people think, he will do whatever he wants. Even something majorly stupid.
I was just with a fantastic person who's Cuban and made a fortune in sugar. You know, Fanjul family, right? And this family wants to go back to Cuba to visit it. They haven't been back in like 50 years or something. They largely come from Cuba. And we'll see what happens. They were asking me about that. They want to go back. Not only Fanjul, a lot of Cubans have said, "Oh boy, would they love to go back." I think Cuba, in its own way, if tourism and everything else, it's a beautiful island, great weather. They're not in a hurricane zone, which is nice for a change, you know. They won't be asking us for money for hurricanes every week. But I think Cuba's the end. You know, all my life I've been hearing about the United States and Cuba. When will the United States do it? I do believe I'll be having the honor of taking Cuba. That'd be good. That's a big honor.
Taking Cuba.
Taking Cuba in some form, yeah. Taking Cuba. I mean, whether I free it, take it, I think I could do anything I want with it. You want to know the truth?
Taking Cuba in some form, yeah. Taking Cuba. I mean, whether I free it, take it, I think I could do anything I want with it. You want to know the truth?
Friend, I hope you can see how they're scripting this out so people expect him to do something stupid, which also tells you they are about to do something stupid that's going to catch the world's attention in a major way. It's going to drastically ramp things up, and it's probably going to be the fault of Trump and Israel. Primarily probably Trump. We are at a threshold right now where we already know we are at a point of no return. But something is about to happen that is going to force Iran, most likely, to get into a back-off position, where he has to tell the bully to back off or we will give you a black eye. Something royally stupid is about to happen. And then Iran will have to respond to it in kind, and when they do, Trump and Israel will use that as, quote, justification to do a limited nuclear strike of some sort, probably, which is also very stupid. And that is going to force the rest of the world to do intervention because of the cascading effects of the permanent damage that they are doing to the energy infrastructure, while also demonstrating that Trump is a loose cannon. He needs to be stopped. This whole situation needs to stop right now. That's where it's going. You are about to see something major stupid happen. Probably on some very, very complex equipment there in the Middle East. Systems are major arteries and pipelines, shutting down and changing the whole scenario, making people realize this impact will not be repaired for years. And thus the impact is going to start in cascading throughout the entire system. And they will need to intervene before permanent damage is done to the days of Noah and Lot's system. Peace and stability. Friends, we are very close. We are right on the threshold. Review the timeline every single day. Links are in the description box. So review the tempo and the intensity, and I'll give you a very good idea of how far we are from the baby scenario, the sudden destruction, and the revealing of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Download the PDF resources in the description box. Be ye ready when to watch and running for the prize. We have heard so many trumpet calls at midnight. We've seen so many peace and safety calls. We've seen so many instructions in Scripture of what we should be doing here at this late hour. We need to watch and be sober. There are so many lies and deceptions going out. Fix your eyes on Jesus Christ. Hold fast to His word, what He says, the warnings that are there. And let's rise up. Let's trim up. Let's gird up. Let's rise up and let's go out to meet our Redeemer with our life, our hands, and our feet in response to what we see. Going out to meet Him, hearing Him, heeding and obeying Him, loving Him, and serving Him first and highest above all else. Shining bright till He comes. Maranatha.